Hey everyone, Troy Hammond here, and we're on the We Fucking Love Startups podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Today's episode is with Constant Meiring. Constant is the co-founder of IGC, or In-Game Collectables, which is a really cool technology company bringing your avatar to life. I'm not going to tell you too much more because I really want you to go on the journey with me and listen, because it's a fantastic, cool technology that my son is really excited by. We talk a lot about his story, how he moved from South Africa to Bali, to Thailand, to New Zealand. He worked for some really cool companies and went from an engineer to a product manager. He tells us that engineers going to product are the best product managers. I'll leave it up to you to decide which is the real best one. And so tune in, enjoy.
Kia ora. Thanks for tuning in to the We Fucking Love Startups podcast, brought to you by Talent Army.
What was it like you moving here, man? Like, what was the process like before we talk into South Africa and the likes?
Like, I mean, South Africa's got great weather, great nature. And we, my partner and I, like spending quite a bit of time outdoors.
Yeah.
So we wanted to get a place where we can have a sort of outdoorsy lifestyle. I guess Auckland is not the best place for that, but New Zealand in general affords a pretty great sort of lifestyle in terms of the weather and everything like that. So we've had a look around. We've known we wanted to leave South Africa for a long time. So at one point, probably 2016-ish, we tried doing the digital nomad thing. Went to live in Thailand for a while, Bali.
That's when I spoke to you first day. I remember you were in Thailand or moving to Thailand, and you were thinking about New Zealand.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Because I got in touch with a few people. I mean, I've got a Ruby background primarily.
Yeah.
So finding that firstly in New Zealand was a bit tricky. It's very sort of Microsoft heavy, C# heavy in New Zealand. They've got a pretty good hold here. So I was looking for companies that did Ruby, and I think that's what we spoke about as well at the time.
Yeah, I think we met in that Ruby channel on Slack.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. And yeah, it ended up just me being like reaching out to people, reaching out to you guys, reaching out to Dovetail. I think another company was called Sell Through, which I think I got into contact through you guys. But anyway, it turns out there was very little companies using Ruby at the time, and I reached out to Dovetail, and they're like, it was a bit of a weird sort of timing thing, because at that time we were still in Bali, but we knew that we didn't want to go back to South Africa. So I was like, hey, we're in Bali for the next, I don't know, year, but are you looking to hire somebody after the next year?
Yeah.
And they were like, well, it's a bit insane, but like, sure. And can you do product? I'm like, well, probably. And
because you were an engineer then, right? You were just dabbling in product a little bit.
It was like at that point I'd founded a business, and before that I became a partner in a design firm. So I had a bit of the sort of customer facing product side of things. I've also always liked being sort of customer facing to get into the heart of the problems you were solving.
Yeah.
I think the transition to product was just, I guess, getting closer to the problems, the human problems. Because I think if you work in tech for a while, you realize most of the problems that you deal with at the end of the day are human problems.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to get a bit closer to that. I think I didn't really understand what product was at that point in time, and I probably still don't.
It's just telling people no, right?
That's what it comes down to. Because everyone has their own ideas, their own product, and there's a massive gulf in between. You get sort of like really sort of foundery product people that go really deep on the problem, speak to customers and do BD, that kind of stuff. And then you also get the product side where the guys coming in from sort of a Scrum certification, and they've been doing sort of project managing stuff more, coming into product from that side. As I mean, all of them are useful, and companies find usefulness in all of those roles. But product as a whole is such a mushy term for a role.
Are you team engineers make the best product managers? Here we go.
I mean, I'm definitely a bit biased there. But yes, I think so.
Why?
I think it helps tremendously to be very close to the technology and what the technology can do, if you're planning what to build. And at the end of the day, a lot of the value that product managers provide is to make sure engineers build the right things. So typically what I've seen happen is engineers, I mean, this is a massive generalization, but what I found is that your typical engineer doesn't really want to deal with customer stuff. They want to write code, they want to build cool stuff, they want to solve technically hard problems, etc., etc. So while you do get engineers that can do both and that are willing to do both, and those I think are typically like sort of tech grounded product engineers.
Yeah.
I just think being close to technology helps quite a bit, and knowing what is possible. Because I think what the process looks like when you come in from a different background, say you become a PM through like it's sort of an MBA kind of background.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily that close to the technology, so it takes a lot longer to learn what's possible and what timelines it's possible, et cetera, et cetera. So I guess the discovery process, if you look at you're building a project, there's usually sort of hopefully a discovery process, figuring out what to build, what the problem is, who the customer is, et cetera, and then there's the execution bit. Now, I think if you're closer to the technology and if you've got a background in working with tech, writing code, seeing the limitations of infrastructure, stuff like that, the discovery period can just be a lot quicker because you essentially end up doing the job of both parties, the product and the engineering. Obviously, if you end up in that role, you end up in meetings. Meetings become the work then, and you end up not writing a lot of code. Which is also, I guess, what happens when you move into engineering management, when you're sort of management position coming from sort of an individual contributor role. I guess that's probably where it comes down to.
Good answer. I think jury's out on whether people will agree with you or not.
Oh yeah, who knows? I'm sure.
I think marketing people will say that marketing people make the best product managers, designers will say whatever they. And I think I think it's great to come from an engineering background for that reason. You know, like when you're working with engineers, you know, especially if you're doing a product owner role initially, you know, delivery focused, it's so good to be able to empathize and understand. And
absolutely.
So you moved here then to be a product manager for Dovetail, who are now Paloma.
Yes.
Dovetail Studios. And so what were you doing at Dovetail initially?
So when I joined, I worked on Afterpay stuff. Dovetail sort of, I don't know how it happened, but they became the fintech guys for APAC. So they ended up working on various fintech products, one of which I first worked on was Afterpay. They did all the consumer-facing stuff, website marketing, apps, everything, and they kind of did most of the back-end stuff. So the banking infrastructure, I wouldn't call it banking infrastructure, the transactional infrastructure and that kind of thing. Started working on that, and then I guess it quickly evolved in me writing less code. And what was my first thing that I worked on really? Like I didn't spend a whole lot of time on Afterpay. I quickly moved into sort of like a customer facing role. But like,
because Dovetail are like a product engineering consultancy, right? So different from what you'd call a traditional agency where you're doing more project management versus product engineering, right?
Yep. So typically how the role, how it works at Dovetail, at least when I was there, and that's what eventually turned into like Dovetail Ventures, because there were these really cool opportunities that came through. But at the same time, running a full dev team is really, really expensive. So I guess it sort of evolved to what is now Dovetail Ventures, of people coming to Dovetail, pitching us, saying, hey, we've got this idea. We think there's a market here. We want to build something in this space. Can you help us? And that's a little bit different from people coming to agencies with a fully formed idea, saying, hey, we need to build this thing. And Dovetail kind of steered clear of that. Because it was the thing that we were selling is that we were doing product teams. We weren't just selling executionary engineering teams. And I mean, it was just like, it was fantastic being in that space where it was also like, it was just like ramping up towards, I guess, end of 2021. That was just like this continual ramp in tech spending and insane investment in fintech in general.
Building fucking cool shit from New Zealand, man.
It was crazy. Like there was really, really cool stuff happening. Australia and New Zealand, I think, I mean, Dovetail ended up probably being like the premier product builder in APAC. So while I was there was like we built quite a bit of things.
All around the fintech sort of space?
Mostly, yeah. One of the last things I worked on there as a PM was a product called Marmalade, which ended up being this invoice financing platform and invoice factoring platform, sorry. And they initially came to us. They were like, hey, they see this opportunity doing sort of a buy now, pay later, afterpay kind of thing for B2B. And that was sort of the cues we were working with. Like, we believe there's this opportunity in this market. What can we do here? And then we'd go away and be like, okay, let's look at the market. Let's look at what other people are doing in the space. Let's look at the opportunity. What's the minimum thing we can build here to test the market and to prove that there's something here? Because that's the other thing you're always battling with, right? Especially when you're in that situation where you've got a third-party agency who are incentivized to charge money.
Yeah.
So you need to get that balance between building something that you can ship and building something that's decent and sort of iterating from there. And I guess with that, the MVP, the idea of MVPs have also sort of evolved over the years. Like 10 years ago, an MVP was just like throwing some stuff together with WordPress and Bootstrap, WordStrap, wow. And then shipping it and see what happens. And I think the standard for MVPs have just gone up substantially. And that it's definitely just sort of moved more towards leaning on product and marketing to have a massive input.
Yeah.
Whereas previously they'll be like, hey, we've got this idea, get 2 engineers to hack it out over a weekend, chuck it into the market and get feedback. But the standard of what consumers expect, consumers and businesses really.
And the feedback you get from your initial sort of, test customers straight away is like, hey, this needs to be better. And then you're like, whoa,
Absolutely.
MVP, right?
Yeah. And that's the thing. You need to be really clear about what kind of feedback you want. And I guess if you need to caveat to people like, hey, ignore how this looks, what this looks like, just look at the functionality. Like, humans don't work like that. Yeah. Humans are visual creatures. Like they see and touch and experience things like that. So it's the table stakes have gone up pretty dramatically. And I think that created the opportunity for companies like Dovetail offering product teams where like, okay, you have this idea, but we can make it into something that actually works in the market, that can scale, that has building integration, like all the bits and pieces to make things work.
Do working with a company like Dovetail or Paloma, as they're called now, the Paloma Group, help you now in terms of because you're a co-founder of a company now, did it give you more nuance, more information in terms of to be able to make decisions going forward now?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's I'd be very surprised if you don't see more sort of alumni from Dovetail and Dovetail Ventures founding their own companies. There have already been a few cases of that. Auth Signal is another one, fantastic security company, and myself, obviously. It definitely puts you in that position because you're not just a project manager executing on somebody's idea. You're there with a customer. You're figuring out with the customer what needs to be built and building it along with them iteratively, which also exposes you to all the real world issues that you deal with as a startup founder. And I think being in that position sort of helps you be more comfortable working in that extreme ambiguity and committing to stuff that you don't necessarily know will work, and committing to smaller chunks and iterating on it, and just giving you the real world experience of what it looks like to build a product from the ground up and putting it into market, because that's a big chunk of founding business. There's always obviously the other side of it, which is relationships, business development, sales, that kind of thing, which unfortunately I think a lot of tech oriented founders potentially miss some of the times, because I can appreciate we like being in the code, we like building stuff. I'm not a salesperson at all. I need to really force myself to sort of be salesy and talk to people and go into that mode, and it just takes an insane amount of energy out of me. So it's I guess playing to your strengths at the end of the day, but in those environments where you build ventures, you very quickly learn what you're good at and what you suck at, which I think is pretty fundamental to knowing what to focus on, knowing what skills to develop. what you can't do. Yeah, it's definitely a
interesting, man. So then you moved to lay-by. You were like, hey, this buy now, pay later thing, I'm going to go all in on this. You moved into a full-time role.
Yeah.
You weren't there for that long.
But
you went in there for a head of product role.
Yeah. So I guess the move there at the time, probably the biggest reason I did that was I was finding that, coming from tech, I've always been in a bit of a tech echo chamber.
Yeah.
And you talk tech to other tech people. It's sort of easy. People get things that you talk about. It's a lot easier when you build tech products with tech people. But what I've realized through Dovetail Ventures and working with founders and doing due diligence on opportunities coming into Dovetail Ventures is that there are, obviously, but there are a lot of non-technical founders, and typically non-technical founders look to work with either a CTO co-founder that they source, which is really, really hard to do, or they come to somebody like Dovetail. And what I realized in that echo chamber is that it's easy to work with other tech people. It's hard. And I realized it was hard for me to effectively communicate with non-tech people.
So you strategically decided to throw yourself into the deep end there by going into a business that was non-technical, right?
Yeah, well, it's a very technical business. But I think the cool thing at Lay-By, at least for me, the opportunity there was a lot of the people in the business was finance people and marketing people and not necessarily tech people. So it was a fantastic opportunity for me to just throw myself into that position where you dealt with C-level guys above you and then your sort of teams below you, most of which are non-technical. And that just really challenged me quite a bit. And I realized in that role how inadequate I was in my different areas of communication. And really sort of, it was a bit of a wake-up call for how I need to communicate, how often I need to communicate, and with whom.
Do you always run towards a fire? Like, is that something in life that you've always done, or?
I do like doing risky things. I think I'm a bit of a risky person.
It's because it's interesting, right? Like a lot of people, you have half that are like, oh, I'm not good in that space. I'm real, like this is my niche. I'm going to stay in that pocket and stay there. And then you have some people that are like, I feel comfortable here. I need to be uncomfortable and learn now.
I've got a affliction that I get bored extremely easily. I've got the whole ADHD thing in school and whatnot, so that's probably part of it. But I found that, and I think that's probably why I ended up in startups, because there's always something
to learn,
something to learn, and several fires burning, several high, like critical things to solve. So in startup companies, you like smaller ones, like bootstrap ones, large ones, size of lay-by. It's all sort of at that stage where it's sort of, lay-by probably had product market fit, but there was still, and like with any startup, there's so many issues that you need to solve. It's not like, I don't know, selling tires. Selling tires is a solved problem. You've got your sales pipeline, you sell to people, you've got your distribution channels, et cetera, et cetera. Building something from the ground up, there's very rarely a playbook for how to do it. And that's what interests me. It's like if I don't have a healthy level of anxiety, I'm not happy.
Yeah, man. I'm the same dude. I'm like, the minute I can find myself in an uncomfortable situation, I feel comfortable again. And the minute it gets easy and boring for me, I'm like, oh, this is wrong. I shouldn't be here.
I get really depressed when I'm bored and I feel kind of stuck. And then it's just really hard for me to actually do work. It's sort of like I get burnt out by being bored.
I'm exactly the same.
I feel there's definitely something wrong with us.
But they do say, the best way to get something done is give it to a busy person, right? Because they can just smash it out.
Or a lazy engineer.
Yeah, exactly. They'll find the quicker solution.
Exactly.
So now you're in a company which is definitely not fintech, right?
No.
So In-Game Collectables is the company.
Yeah.
I'm really interested to hear about this. So is my son, by the way, who is massive on collectibles and games. And so can you break down what is this company first?
Okay, so In-Game Collectables, the vision is to make it partner firstly with game studios and enable them to enable their players to order one-off collectible editions of the avatars they play. The market is just continually growing. People are spending obscene amounts of time playing their online avatar in games like Fortnite, you know?
Yeah.
Even if it's not even online, like Elden Ring, like people spend insane amounts of time on that.
Their lives, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And on the MMORPG side of things, where you play with your friends, that's where you hang out. Like the social proof side of your avatar is enormous, and there's just no way to bring that into the physical. That's what we do. So we enable gamers to order a physical collectible of themselves, essentially.
Yeah. Where did this come about? How did this thing come, like...
So Craig, my co-founder, is a bit of a collectible nut, and he's made these concrete sort of Lego collectibles, and he's got a extensive like watch collection, his toy collection is also pretty substantial, and is very much into games. And how it came about at that point was he was grinding through Doom Eternal, collecting all of the little collectibles in game that you can get, as one does, hundreds of hours. And he wanted to just buy one of the collectibles, and he couldn't. Just everything was out of stock. There was just no way to physically get the collectible he was after. I think at the time there was like stuff on eBay for like 10x the cost that it would have been or whatever. And it's just like, well, why is this so difficult? Like it should be easier. And at that point, he started chatting to me. Alex at Hill Farrens at the time sort of hooked us up again, because he interviewed me at Lay-By, but he sort of went on with his stuff and I was working on my things. And after I finished up at Lay-By, I gave myself some time to really look at what's out there. I wanted to do my own thing. And Craig pitched the idea to me. It was like, hey, we want to like he thinks there's this opportunity for collectibles from game avatars. And I'm like, well, this sounds great. I mean, it's really cool. And everyone that we were talking to at the time to get some feedback. And we did some proper market feedback as well.
What's the TAM? TAM is total addressable market for people that are listening to this and saying, what's he talking about?
If you look at the collectibles industry alone, it's like a $400 billion global market. The games industry along, I don't know what the number is on the gaming industry specifically, but it's also in the vicinity of billions. And then you're looking at the media industry as well. Like media and gaming are just like continually mushing together all the more.
The media, so now I can have an avatar of me with headphones on a podcast mic.
Indeed.
Perfect.
Indeed. I guess what then happened is I started digging into how we could make this happen. Like how we could, I guess, firstly, I mean, at that point, the idea was we create collectibles from games. And
is that 3D printing them yourselves?
Yes. So it came down to that, because we realized that we can't really compete with the traditional merchandising market, where you've got people producing hundreds of thousands of toys, selling them for super cheaply. And then like recently happened with pop funk, if they don't get the demand right, they chuck like millions and millions of toys in the dump, which is really not something we want to be doing, given the state of things on our planet and our ability to generate plastic as humans.
And these are all specifically unique, right? Like
the ones that we do. So there's the existing merchandising market, where people typically go and like license IP, and then they pay back a percentage or whatever revenue share with the IP holders. And that's a massive market, a massive established market. What we're doing at the moment, which is cool but also makes it really hard, we're essentially creating a bit of a new market to a degree, because you can't at the moment order your collectible. And we realized after the fact, like, it couldn't be this hard. It's hard. There's the process of getting it out of the game.
So let's break that down for a second there.
Yep.
The process of getting it out of a game means how do you actually physically get the 3D model into a blueprint type thing?
How do you get the 3D model from the game into a place the 3D printer can understand? Now, both work with meshes and textures, but very rarely do meshes optimized for game use, which typically needs to run at
so there's no off-the-shelf integration solution that you can buy that takes...
No. People have tried this and extracting a mesh from a game. That's possible. You can like write an SDK that takes a mesh and then posts to an API somewhere.
Yeah.
The issue with that is, I just mentioned that the meshes typically don't print well. They typically break in a million pieces. The printer struggles to understand them. It's making that bridge, I guess, between what the game can output and what the printer can understand is a big part of the problem that we're solving. The other thing is the character like the user, like the gamer sees it, only exists at render time, really, because you've got this whole game engine adding shaders, adding lighting, adding your hat and your sword and whatever, effects and whatnot. And even if you were to be able to get that mesh out of the game, you still lose a lot of information of what that looks like, the context, etc., etc. So we've essentially ended up getting to the point where we're like, okay, we can't reliably take meshes from a game and print it. It's just impossible. We tried. You can do a bunch of manual work, but there isn't really a business here if we need to manually fix each thing that we're going to print. So what we did is I was digging around a bit, and NVIDIA did some really cool research at the time. That was end of last year that they published. I think it was SIGGRAPH, the conference in December of last year.
Was it Eugene Dion's research?
I don't know, actually.
Yeah, Eugene, sort of rendering scientist that lives in Wellington, New Zealand, works for NVIDIA. Super smart guy. You should have a chat with him.
Yeah, I absolutely should. Hey. Should hook us up.
He also has great wine selection.
Man, okay, now you sold me.
Yeah. Last time he texted me at about 9 o'clock at night one night and said, "Hey, I'm at this Noble Rock, Wellington, which is like a nice wine bar." And he goes, "I'm here by myself drinking wine. Do you want to join me?" And I don't think I've ever run that fast before. And I turned up and he was just drinking the nicest wines.
Amazing.
And just the smartest guy, lovely guy to chat to. So definitely, I'll hook you up.
Fantastic. I'll have to chat with him. Anyway, we got to... It's essentially photogrammetry, where you take images of an asset and then generate a
so
mesh.
like volumetric photogrammetry in terms of the asset, or
I guess, yeah. We're mostly interested on the outside of the model, and that's one of the things that we struggled with initially, getting these things to print. There's lots of hidden detail, lots of stuff that prints that you don't necessarily want to print. Spaceships, we did some spaceships for a massive game. And I don't know if I can sort of drop names at this point, but it was almost the opposite of the problem we initially set out to solve, because we're like, okay, our assumption is we're going to have to print low poly, low res texture models from a game to so our pipeline at that point was smoothing out the geometry, upscaling the textures, etc. We tried printing the spaceships. We had the opposite problem in that, like, we had this almost 2 gig big, like, large mesh with insanely intricate details on the inside of the ship, and we couldn't get the printer to print it because it kind of broke. The printer was like, there's just too much. The printer couldn't slice it, and it was a bit weird because that was a bit of an unexpected.
Because it was trying to interpret the internal makeup of the model as well.
Yeah. And to the print, like, for us, we don't care. We just want to see the outside.
Yeah.
So eventually what we got to with this NVIDIA research, and we've since moved on from that research and developing our own IP, but it sort of put us in the right direction in terms of differentiable rendering. And differentiable rendering is just like the opposite of rendering. Instead of taking a mesh and textures and changing that into an image, you take a set of images and you change that back to a mesh. So it's, in a sense, reverse engineering meshes and textures. And we realized we could use this tech. So this tech is primarily and a lot of the tech being worked on in academia in this space is for taking real world stuff and making it easily usable in Unreal Engine or Unity or whatever. We're using that same technology to capture very, very easily with low integration cost for the game studios, capture essentially at the 360 view of the asset that you want printed, your avatar. And if there's one thing any game engine on the planet can do is have something in the middle of your view and spin a camera around it.
Yeah.
So it's extremely easy to integrate with us. And that's obviously, that's a big challenge. Like, if you can have the coolest tech in the world, if you don't have an easy on-ramp, you're dead in the water.
Are the game studios receptive to this? Like,
I mean, yes. Like, people are very excited about it.
I'm getting Daniel Elk talking to the music labels at Spotify in the early days, vibes in my head of like going to these, record labels and saying, "Hey, we want to take your music and put it on, for free."
It's hard. I think it's a bit of a hard sell for. I'd say it's a hard sell. Everyone's excited about the idea. We just don't have the technology ready quite yet. So it's a bit of a chicken egg situation. You need to show that you can do this thing, but you also need sort of a partner to co-develop it. So our strategy up until this point has been to develop our core generative AI tech, but also just produce collectibles for game studios from their IP twofold to build relationships and to show that we can deliver high quality collectibles. That's sort of like, I think, the first step to convincing
people. And your MVP is fucking hard.
It is really. It's definitely one of the more challenging things I've done, because you've got the 3D printing side, the production, physical production, and man, that's hard. Like, coming from software where nothing you do is real, the physical manufacturing side of things is intensely hard, and scaling that up, especially with 3D printing. 3D printing is just getting to the point now through companies through like Stratasys and Mamaki, where people are really scaling it up. It's only up until recently really just been a prototype platform. So we're sort of on that wave of trying to scale up 3D printing, because if we integrate, like any game we integrate with has, like if we have a 1%, even if we have a 0.1% conversion rate on a game with 1 million players, we're in trouble. Because the CapEx investment in these machines are pretty expensive. So one of the things that we're solving for is the scaling side. And we're manufacturing at the moment as a means to an end. We don't want to necessarily be a manufacturing company. We're just doing it because we need to at the moment.
Prove the case, right?
Exactly. And one of our work streams is essentially figuring out what would make the most sense for us in terms of partnerships with the leading 3D printing companies, or just lean on manufacturers that have been doing this for a while. And there is one or two out there that have been mostly producing sort of tabletop kind of figurines, that kind of stuff. So
they Chinese companies?
No, surprisingly not, actually. The biggest one is situated in Germany.
Oh, wow.
So I think that, there's a big move in the world at the moment as well of sort of onshoring manufacturing. And I think that's a big driver of 3D printing capabilities, people doubling down on that. And it just fits in well with what we do, because we can't mass manufacture. Like, it's just not, like, our value prop is one out of one. So we've got the scaling manufacturing side of things, and we're working with some really smart people to get that done. And then we also have the make ready bit, which is taking the in-game asset in whatever form and producing it, recreating it in a sense. Not in a sense, we're literally recreating it. And that's where generative AI comes in. It's literally just like taking data and creating new data from that data. Takes the images, differentiable rendering pipeline, and it spits out a watertight mesh and a texture that we can actually produce. So we're moving pretty fast in that part of the tech that we're really excited about. And the next couple of weeks, we hope to be able to take videos of ourselves, put it into our pipeline, and out pops a 3D version of ourselves. Now, you can do that at the moment through stuff like Polycam. And our goal here isn't to take the physical into the digital, which that's most of what these people do. But if we can do that, we can also do that in-game. So those two are sort of like the manufacturing part, scaling that.
Have you seen a company called Bolograms?
No, I haven't.
Check them out. So I used to do a lot of work for 8i back in the day, which was like a virtual reality company in Wellington, where I met Eugene, who's the chief scientist there. And they did volumetric video capture of humans to turn them into holograms that they could consume in games or movies or whatever it was. It's really interesting hearing you tell your side of the story, because I feel like it was the story that Eugene told me in reverse.
I guess that is what most of the tech is being developed for, is taking the physical and creating what they call a digital twin of it. We're just abusing that technology to get a very, very easy pipeline into a game asset, into 3D. So there's the two parts. We've got the scaling end. We've got the make ready of the mesh and the textures in a format that the printer can understand through various means, either through sending the mesh to the printer itself or deeper integration, doing voxel prints, where you essentially just slice and send the printer like a 50,000 PNG slices. It's a technique that's frequently used in the medical industry. Surgeons kind of like printing out MRIs or stuff to see what they're going to be working on before they do so. And then with those two sort of on the end of the process, the front end is obviously integration with the games. And again, bit of a chicken egg situation, because we need to have a scaling solved. We need to have make ready done, which we're very close to, and we need our first integration. And we can't do several integrations because we won't be able to deliver at this point in time. So yeah, we're busy. We just hired somebody from Wellington, our first remote hire, that's going to come and help us, sort of customer-facing game integration engineer to work.
Who's that?
Eugene. She's Eugene Park. She's coming to sort of help us just deal with game studios, understand what their constraints are. Because, I mean, game studios are absolutely insane places. What the stuff that they produce and the time it takes to produce it is just nuts. Like, they're always insanely busy. Like,
they're always on edge to working around the clock. And trying to get in conversations with them.
Absolutely. So it's a hard sell. But at the same time, we think there's absolutely something here. Like, nobody's ever said no to us. Everyone's really, really excited. It's just a matter of time, and
well, I can confirm, right? So my credit card takes a fucking hammering from my son. Constantly updating his avatar on Fortnite.
V-Bucks.
Yeah, V-Bucks, man. I fucking to the point where, like, I have to keep him in line. But he's emotionally connected to that character, right? And initially, as a parent, I was worried about his gaming a little bit, but I've come to realize now he's actually so socially aware because of all the friendships that he's made throughout the world and people, and he's got his mates in Australia that he met online that he's FaceTiming as he's playing gaming, and he's chatting to other people and the likes, and he's solving such amazing problems gaming, right? And then so the world that he lives in now, and he's really emotionally connected to it, and then that avatar, is almost like his persona, and so I use that, like when he's playing sport now, he's playing football and basketball, and I say to him, hey man, like put your avatar suit on before you go out to play soccer. And he was like, what do you mean? And I was like, because your confidence that you have with that avatar is the same confidence you can have if you just mentally put it on before you go out and play. So when we talk about his uniform now, it's like he literally feels like he's putting his little avatar on, and he goes out there and he's a different person.
No, it's insane. People really, really get insanely connected to these avatars, because if you spend half your waking hours as something that represents you, you're going to absolutely become that thing. And it's
you just got to look at Ready Player One, right?
Exactly. I mean, that's probably a bit of a what's the word?
Concern?
No, I wouldn't say concern. Well, yes, but I guess the world around it is concerning. But it's definitely something that, as a civilization, we are moving towards continually. I think as it becomes resource scarcity, like oil, that kind of thing, flying around, like in person is very expensive. And I think as we become more efficient as a species, a big chunk of that would be to how do we communicate without having to be in person, especially as we just continually globalize our ways of working and how the world's just so connected, and we still rely on people having to be there physically. I think COVID gave us a bit of a trial by fire around.
Yeah, I think it pushed people right to the place that they didn't want to go and they felt uncomfortable with, and then they now got used to it. I think there's a real, people are pushing back now, trying to get it back to the old world, but the old world's changed, and the new world is fascinating. Like, you only have to look at Apple's new technology with their headsets to say, oh, well, how's that going to change the game, right? Like, how is that going to be? The fact that you can see my eyes when I'm in a virtual reality means that it doesn't completely remove me from the room in, my family situation. And the fact that you don't have to hold paddles or anything, and you can actually feel connected in terms of what you're doing. That's, for me, where mixed reality gets really exciting. And I can see a world where I can be emotionally connected to people. If I'm sitting in a boardroom wearing headsets, some other people are there and I can still see them and communicate with them, but then I can also see Constant, who's at the end of the table, who's currently sitting in South Africa or wherever he is.
I think that's absolutely key to us moving forward as okay, so taking a step back, augmentation. We're already augmented. We are stuck on our phones. It's some people say it as an addiction to our phones, but it's really sort of this extra universe in your pocket that you carry around. You've got access to all information in the entire world.
It's an extension to your brain now.
It is, right? Absolutely. And I just can't see a world where we won't continuously work at getting that integration better and more direct. At the moment, the bandwidth is ridiculous. You have to touch with your like fingers on a touch screen and type in like letter for letter. It's insane. Like if you think about how quick your brain works and the processing power in your phone, like the bandwidth limitation between you and your device is it's just ridiculous.
What's the thing that's holding us back as a civilization now, right? And
Absolutely.
So what's your take on Neuralink with like?
Oh man, I'm super excited about that.
Yeah,
it's and I think that's where I'm really really excited about AI as well, and like the tech behind large language models in general is it's really these abstract interfaces that we can create and that we essentially train on a bunch of data, and we have this black box that now translates stuff for us. And what LLMs do is it translates your words into something that you want to get out on the other side. You don't know what that other side is going to look like. And a lot of the same tech is, I mean, I don't know if you saw, there was a paper that came out the other day, I think it was last week, where they used the same kind of tech to have a brain spine interface to get a guy that hasn't been able to walk for like, I think his whole life to walk.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, that is insane, the stuff that opens up to us. And I think it just opens up so many other things, and it comes down to that interface and interacting with computers. Like at the moment, it's all keyboards and like typing on screens and stuff. But I think the best place where we can be is if those interactions and computers become invisible to us.
Yeah.
Like ideally you just think about something and you think about it in such a way that, I know, your sugar that you just run out of gets added to the shopping list.
Yeah.
And I think we're probably going to, I don't know, it'll take a while to get there. But things like Neuralink is really going to unlock insane new capabilities for us to really, I guess, execute at the speed of thought. Because at the moment you think about something and then you like do it.
Mate, what's that law? What's the something law in technology? Like every 12 months, everything changes over again. What's that law, Johnny? Can you look that up for me? Something law. I can't think of it at the moment.
That's probably not Moore's law with the CPUs.
And so it's like the law of like every 12 months, we're pretty much, taking 100 steps ahead. I can't remember what it is.
And it's hyperbolic, right? Like I think that's like, humans aren't good at thinking exponentially. And looking back, almost in every sort of technologically advanced anything, if you look back, things have happened exponentially. And the current sort of wave of generative AI is a very good example of that.
You got it, Johnny?
Yeah, I've got it. Can you? Yeah. It says, I think you're talking about Moore's law.
Moore's law, that's right.
He's the founder of Intel. And in 1965, he said the observation that the number of transistors on computer chips doubles approximately every 2 years.
Yeah. And so I feel like, because the point I was going to make when I was trying to think of that was like, Moore's law was 2 years. I feel like now it's like 6 months. So on that, right? So do you see LLMs and AI as a separate thing now? Like, do you think LLMs have become their own world now that we disassociate with them at AI, or do you think it's still?
It's definitely still AI. It's definitely machine learning. It's kind of stats at the end of the day.
Yeah, it feels like to me that it's almost like it's a new category on its own now. Like it's removed itself from AI now, and I think what that's done is for people that don't necessarily understand the technology and the data and like what AI can do and the benefits of it, is that they can see, it's not as scary when we're thinking about large language models as we are thinking about robots taking over and killing the world. Right? That doesn't sound good. But
I think there's definitely risk involved. There's a lot of people that think there's massive risks involved, a lot of smart people, and then there's also a lot of smart people that say it's overblown. It's not that scary. I think what's going to happen is we're going to plug these new tools into our existing tools, APIs, whatever, like as a way to bridge communication between two computers, or a human and a computer, or a human and what they actually want to do versus what they're saying. And there's going to be a lot of interpretation being done by the AI, and that might result in doing things that it's not supposed to do. And the more we integrate those kind of systems where we don't really know what the outcome is going to be, and that's probably part of the problem with LLMs at the moment. It's very hard to, I think the terms align them. So they're not. I mean, like I don't know if you know, if you can remember. I think it was Tay. It was a Twitter bot that. It's
Tay bot
came to like this.
She went crazy real quick.
Raging racist Nazi bot in like an hour kind of thing.
But man, like even a human on Twitter goes into a crazy person after a couple of hours.
Indeed. And I guess that's like I guess my next point around that is that it ends up, it's this weird mirror, I guess. LLMs are this weird mirror to society because it's trained on stuff that we've been spewing out for the past, I don't know, however long. And it's just taken those and put it into weights. It's just essentially like if we arrive at this word with these words behind it, what's the most likely next word? That's really what it comes down to. And then it spits out stuff that looks really real and convincing that there's a human thing behind there. And I think the recent sort of advancements that we've been seeing has been mostly down to hardware accessibility, right? There's like NVIDIA has been doing a lot of development. I think like crypto mining's been at the back of a lot of that development, and there's a lot of crypto people moving into AI at the moment. But I think that the hardware really unlocked what we have at the moment. And
what are you using AI for? Are you using AI for like a point cloud, getting the point cloud in terms of?
So there's two ways that we look at it, or that we're sort of developing at the moment. But essentially, we're training a neural field, a nerve, which is a way to represent 3D data.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that we'll see a lot of in the next 5 to 10 years. It's just traditionally you use a mesh, triangles connected to each other to show 3D data to humans in a way that they understand visually. Whereas nerves are really cool in that it's a model that you train, and the model works. Well, if you've trained the model, what you can do with the model is you can give it a point in a 3D space and it'll return a color.
Yeah.
And if you do that in enough places, a whole new scene emerges. And the side effect of that is that you can get novel views from that. So you can train it on 5 images from different angles, and then you can get new angles through using a neural field. So that's one of the ways we're looking at solving the problem.
Fascinating, man. So a couple more questions for you. How fascinating is it working in a company where you have a hardware and software solution now?
Oh, it is awesome. I guess like coming from software, like everything that you ever built doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It's just out in the ether. So working on something that produces something physical is really, really cool.
Do that first moment when that 3D printer was printing, you must have been like,
dude, it's magic.
Fuck yeah.
It is magic. It is magic. It comes out in these, and the thing is also the other thing that's made this opportunity only sort of a thing now is the 3D printing technology.
Yeah.
The Stratasys printer that we're using as our R&D machine at the moment, PolyJet printer, prints a resolution of I think it's 12 micrometers layers, and it prints in full color. You can Pantone match.
That was my next question for you. Was like, how do you get the color representation? Is it a painting solution afterwards, like where with game?
It prints it with the color.
Wow.
So it's so accurate that you can Pantone validate these colors. We don't, but people that use it for packaging, manufacturing, that kind of stuff. That's really important to them. And it comes out in this little white cocoon because it builds it out layer by layer by layer. It also adds support around it. So say you've got an arm sticking out, you need to keep that arm upright, else it'll just like flip off. It deposits a layer of resin, and then it cures that same layer of resin in the next round with a UV lamp. So it's like deposit resin, cure until you've got this thing, this blob really, with support around it.
Ready to be hatched.
It's like this little egg, and you take it out and you wash out the stuff, wash out the support from it. And out emerges this like borderline production quality figure that looks like you bought it in the shop. It's magical. It's really like sort of alien tech. It's like printing food, but printing.
Yeah. I feel like we're in this period now where so many software people are looking to build hardware, because like everyone's like, oh, have we run out of ideas for software, or is it just stale? And and there's the environmental things that we can do for the planet now, and there's like so many so hardware things that we can focus on. So
I guess that's also a point I could probably touch is I guess we we've gone out of our way to get our packaging and everything to a point like we don't want to ship. We are very aware of the fact that we're producing plastic things, and the last thing that we want is people throwing out the plastic things we create away. So our packaging is pretty much, we worked with some really cool Auckland packaging designers called Think. Cardboard engineers is actually the term, and they've helped us develop packaging that the only thing that we ship is the thing that you're going to keep, hopefully forever. So no extra packaging, anything like that. So if you contrast that to Pop Fingers, for instance, hopefully they don't get sued about this, but they just got their demand wrong, and then they threw away millions of toys in the trash. The cool thing that we do is that we manage demand when demand's created. We create one thing when you want that one thing. And I think that's probably going to be the future of how we produce anything, really.
Hyper-personalization.
Hyper-personalization. There's like, if I look at where 3D printers are moving, there's just no way to think anything else will happen. There's definitely demand for it. It's just the cost is pretty high at the moment. But if you just look over the past 10 years, like the advancements in tech and cost for producing one-off things from 3D printing, it's moving really, really, really fast.
Yeah, man, super interesting. Hey, you've given me lots to learn from, think about today. It's been really interesting. I love geeking out on shit like this.
Yeah,
anything I don't know anything about. I just love being the dumbest person in the room.
I love learning, man. I love learning so much.
And so in the spirit of learning, right, like what I'm trying to leave people with now is if they get to the end of the episode, as a bit of a thank you for staying with us and hearing it all out, right, I want to give them a little bit of a nugget from the guest in terms of something that they can go off and look into. And so if we're going to pop something on the bottom of the show notes now for people to, go off and look at, and it's something that's moved you, whether it be a podcast, whether it be a book, whether it be a talk, whether it be a blog or a piece of writing.
I guess, I think a lot of the audience would already know him, but Lenny Rachitsky is a pretty famous product guy. I very, very much sort of lap up everything that he says and writes about. I'd probably have a look at that. Yeah, Lenny Rachitsky.
Yeah, awesome.
Really, really cool guy to follow and see what he has to say.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Yeah, well, I think it's refreshing hearing about Lenny. I know Lenny, that every time I talk to a product person, it's almost like I can see them wearing their Patagonia jacket, carrying the lean product book as their Bible.
Yeah.
Interesting, man. Hey, thank you so much. This has been a really fascinating chat.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to see where you take this company. It's cool to hear these little stories coming out of New Zealand of like really cool, bespoke, interesting, things that are getting built, trying to solve the problem on the journey of building the MVP and coming up against lots of challenges along the way. It just sounds like a fun thing to do, man.
It is fun. Awesome. It's a struggle, but it's fun.
And so people want to check out what it is and what you're doing. Where can they go to have a look?
They can go look at igc.studio.
Yeah.
Investors Hill Ferrance also wrote a really, really good piece around why they invested in us and the market they see around it. They can just Google that IGC Hill Ferrance and it'll come up.
Yeah.
I think they've done a good job at summarizing.
They're doing good work, man.
And they are awesome. I love Rob and Alex. They're so supportive. If you're looking for smart money, that's where to go.
And he's obviously got a passion for the gaming industry.
Absolutely. A big chunk of their portfolio companies are exposed to gaming or media. They're fantastic. Their connections that they've made for us have been insanely helpful. And just like having somebody that goes like somebody that has that exposure and experience in the industry, both on games and media, going like, fuck yeah, this is awesome. We should do this. It's such a crazy amount of validation. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Shout out to them. They're fantastic dudes to work with.
Awesome, man. So igc.studio, go up and check it out. We'll pop it in the show notes. Constant, thank you so much for coming on, man. It's always a pleasure to chat to you, but this one was particularly interesting, man, so thank you.
Cool, man. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. However you're consuming this podcast, I'm so pleased that we've got so many people listening to it now. We've got so many subscribers. Our numbers are blowing up. We were just chatting with Jono and I earlier. We were the number 3 podcast on Apple in business. We were the number 1 podcast in entrepreneurs in New Zealand. We're constantly in the charts. It's phenomenal. We're so humbled. We're so thankful. But it's only because of the amazing guests that we get on. And so people like Constant who come on and tell their story, share how hard some of his personal challenges have been in terms of finding the right research, in terms of his meshing technology and the likes. And so it's phenomenal that we get to share these stories with people. So thank you so much for watching and listening. Thank you for the people that are subscribing. If you're a subscriber, I may get Constant to build me avatars of me, where like a little Troy with headphones on that we get 3D printed, and you push a button and he swears and said, "We fucking love startups." I'm kidding, but maybe we do it, maybe we don't. Thank you so much for everyone that's listening. Thank you so much for Constant for coming on and sharing your story. And until next time, see you later.
This podcast is produced by John Otaka from Empire Films.